Good afternoon, everybody. I think a few minutes ago I said good morning, but I don't remember. My name is Melinda Elliott. I am the LaCAN team leader for Regions 5. LaCAN stands for the Louisiana Council's Advocacy Network. I also work at Families Helping Families. I am the programs manager, and my co-host, Wallace Johnson, my co-host and my friend, Wallace Johnson, is with me today from Families Helping Families. So the first thing I wanted to do, I promised you an advocacy training and a membership meeting. So the first thing that I want to do is go over a few slides about advocacy. We do a variety of trainings at Families Helping Families. You can always check our website, FHFSWLA.org. And here towards the end, I'm going to ask you to do a really short evaluation, mainly because that's how we continue to get funding for free webinars like this. We try to have several every month. So check our website, check our Facebook. We put it all on our Facebook groups, and even some of us put it on our individual Facebook pages, I think they're called. So if you care about issues affecting people with developmental disabilities and students with disabilities, you might want to make sure that you're a member of LaCAN. And I bet you Wallace has already dropped the link into the chat box for you. Yep. Wallace is a wonderful co-host about where you can join Families Helping Families. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. You can sign up there, or you can let me know that you want me to sign you up for LaCAN. Like I said, it's free. Really, all you're signing up for is emails. I might want you to do other things, but I'll talk to you about it, or I'll email you about it, or I'll text you about it. But yeah, it's a good way to learn about the developmental disability system and about special education. You're going to see my information at the end of this presentation. And when you get this presentation, the link to LaCAN should be a hot link. So you're going to have a lot of opportunities to get involved in advocacy once you join. And you decide how much you want to be involved. So let's look at some of those advocacy opportunities. A lot of times people don't know those opportunities on their own. So that's my job, is to guide you in advocacy opportunities, to guide you in testimony, telling your story, to guide you in what to do when. Part of your job will be to tell me the important things for us to pay attention to. I'll get to that at the end too. But community action meetings are like a special kind of membership meeting. I specifically am looking for things that people want us, LaCAN, as a group, to take to the legislature or to Bessie about people with disabilities, people with developmental disabilities, about the service system, about how things work, how things don't work. But that's how you give input into next year's legislative agenda. Not everybody's input is going to make it onto our agenda. Our agenda usually only has like 3 bullets, because if you get very many more 3 bullets, then you start losing track of what needs to be done. But well, and there's things that come up during the session that everybody has to work on. So what are you going to do? I want you to attend one of the two meetings. Wallace and I are putting those together now. You should start getting emails and Facebook notices from the group about it here in the next week or so. I want you to think about what does or doesn't work. And if you know why, you don't have to have a solution, but it needs to be something about the legislative agenda, something the legislature can work on, or possibly Bessie could work on. And then give me those items for next year. And when I finish this, I'm going to show you the a form that I developed that you can do that will send you after this training. So the other thing, one of the really important things is what we call action alerts. When you belong to a group like LaCAN, you know, moms, dads, people with disabilities, people that care about people with disabilities, and professionals, you belong to a group that you know, there's numbers. Everybody can do a little bit. Some people can do more than others. But these action alerts is one of the easiest ways because you don't even have to leave home to take action. So this could happen year round, particularly since we're talking about Bessie, because Bessie meets year round, but the legislature meets during odd times of the year too. You know, like Senate Finance, House Appropriations, joint budget on the joint committee on the budget. So it is possible, but particularly at Bessie. The idea is that in that action alert, we're going to talk about proposed policy changes and how that might affect you and or your loved ones. So again, what's your role? I'm hoping that you're going to read the alerts. And if you need to talk about them, you can call me. My information is at the end of this PowerPoint. And we can talk about it. I'm hoping that you're gonna, I can't get on this right and still be able to see everything. So you can see my head and I don't look like I have the top cut off. Anyway, I want you to call or email your policymaker about the issue. Tell them how it affects you. Tell them your story. Tell them the story about your family member, your neighbor, whomever. And yeah, I can help you do that. I can help you tell your story. I can help you put it together so that you're going to get the most impact, the most bang for your buck. Then another great way to get involved is to go on a legislative visit. So legislative visits happen year round. I set up individual visits with legislators every year. Myself, or sometimes a families member, but generally myself will go with you. And I mean, I see this as my primary role to help you develop a relationship with the policymakers, particularly your policymaker, right? So what do I want y'all to do? I want y'all to go with me on a visit to your legislator. Those visits could be virtual or in person, and you and I can talk about that and then talk to, you know, email or call the legislator about it. You tell your story and how it might relate to advocacy issues. And you can sign up to do that today. Again, I'm going to help you write, because if you're like me and you don't have it written down, I have notes right now. If you don't have stuff written down, you're going to forget something. It's just the way people are. And, you know, I get off on a tangent about something. If we write it down, at least you sort of have an outline of what you want to say. Generally, there's a thing that we do called roundtables. We'll talk about it in a couple of minutes. And there's a sign-up sheet if you're interested, or you can just email me and tell me you're interested. Now, if I understood correctly from Wallace, there are people all over the state on here. So I'm not the only LaCAN leader. I'm the LaCAN leader for Southwest Louisiana. So that's Beauregard, Allen, Calcasieu, Jeff Davis, and Cameron parishes. But there's one like me in every region of the state. So you can either go to your Families Helping Families Center website and look for that person, or you can call us and we'll tell you who that person is. So you have your opportunity even if you're not in my region, right? Okay. Another way to get involved is by participating in what we call Yellow Shirt Days. So Yellow Shirt Days can happen year-round. Remember Bessie, year-round. The point to Yellow Shirt Days is to remind policymakers that the effect, what they're deciding affect real people with disabilities, and to support an issue that's being discussed. You might attend a Yellow Shirt Day. If you attend a legislative Yellow Shirt Day, they have cards in support or opposition, and we'll talk about that the day that you get there. And legislators like talking to their constituents. They're nice to me because they've known me for years now, but they'd rather talk to you. So a lot of times if you ask them, they'll come down into the hallway and talk to you for a few minutes. And again, you'll get to talk about your story then. So if you can't make it in person, you can watch the committee meetings. You go to the legislative website. It's on this slide. You might host watch parties on social media where several of you get together and you tag your friends and policymakers and you talk about what's going on. We have hashtags for you to use if you're into that sort of thing. So please use them. It helps us stay connected. The examples are on here. You can do X. Well, they don't call it Twitter anymore. Or you can email members of the committee. There's several of them on X. And you can share how those issues affect your loved ones or yourself. And you can email in support of issues being discussed. A lot of times when you get those action alerts, there's an email in there. It might be an email to a certain legislator from this area, or it might be an email to the committee, or it might, and sort of the same thing with Bessie. It can be an email to a specific Bessie member or to the committee, and let them know how things affect you. Sorry, I need a throat lozenge. After a while, my voice starts to disappear. So, this last way to get involved is by providing the public testimony. I told you about a few ways that you can share your story today, but this is another one. Again, it can happen year-round, particularly with Bessie, but still with the legislator. The purpose is to remind the policymakers the decisions they make affect real people with disabilities and to support an issue being discussed. On Yellow Shirt Day, most of the time, not every Yellow Shirt Day, but most of the time, we have people that are selected to tell their story. But even if you're not one of the people that day that's selected to tell your story. Your story is important. We need to work on it. And you can complete a card in support or opposition to what's going on. And like I said, you can get your legislator to come down and talk to you for, sometimes it might be 2 or 3 minutes, but you could get them to talk to you and talk to them in person. I can be there with you. I can help you put together your story. Let's talk about how you can do it at home. Watch those committee meetings. They need to know if that people that care about certain issues are watching. Maybe mention that in your conversation with them. I watched the committee meeting. But anyway, just like those yellow shirt days, your public testimony can be shared virtually and electronically. You can email, tweet, message the members of the committee and share your story in writing or even a brief video. Tag your friends and policymakers and use our hashtags. You can email your story and tell them if you're in support or opposition of the issues being discussed. There's an email for the committee, and each legislator has an email. It's really important to have virtual presence. So when you want to talk about how to advocate, the Louisiana Developmental Disabilities Council has a website page. This should be a hot link when you get my PowerPoint that has all kinds of other stuff about advocacy and how to advocate on it. So, you know, free information related to issues that you care about. I guess I don't have my slide for this one, but one of the other ways that I was talking about was the roundtables. Every year I have a legislative roundtable. This past year we did a hybrid webinar, which means we had people sitting in the room. We had a pile of people sitting in the room, and we had another pile of people that were on virtually. We always have good representation. Senator Stein co-hosts with us in the past, and hopefully he will again in 2025. He was at the meeting, you know, listening to what we had to say, and then people are giving their story. People are telling their story. Stories that we worked on before, stories that we helped, or I try to help you get the most impact. And, you know, he got to talk to the real people that were there with their stories. There's, you know, if you meet your legislator in an elevator, if you have your story down, you can tell them all a part of your story in 2 or 3 minutes in an elevator. Or, you know, we have festivals in Louisiana at a festival. There's all kinds of ways though. And I'm going to show you as soon as I get to the and Wallace, I guess there isn't anybody asking me questions in chat, because y'all know y'all can ask me questions in chat.
I don't see anybody at the moment.
Ooh, but you put a link.
A link in there how to find the legislators in Louisiana.
That's a wonderful link. Thank you, Wallace. But you want to talk to me some more? I am the Region 5 LaCAN leader. You can get me at any of these places. Wallace and I are at the Families Helping Families of Southwest Louisiana office. You can get us there too. I appreciate y'all attending. Now let me get out of this. If I can remember how, Wallace. And share a little form that I put together. What? Not the best time of year to be speaking. This is the LaCAN and Families Helping Families Community Input Form. It's nothing formal, okay? It is, if we'll send you a copy of this with the handouts. If you fill it out, I'd appreciate your name and your phone number, but if you don't send me your name and your phone number, that's okay. But a lot of times when we communicate what the people in the community have recommended to us to the Louisiana Developmental Disabilities Council staff, they want some clarification on it. So I don't share this form with them, but I could come back to you and make sure that I really understand what I think I understand, right? So for home and community-based services, we're talking about the now waiver, the row waiver, the supports waiver, or children's choice. We're also talking about individual and family supports or flexible family fund. Y'all don't know what any of those are. Either chat me up now or call me later and let's talk about it. But I want to know, do you see part of the system that isn't fair for people with developmental disabilities, or it doesn't work right? It might be within those programs, or it might be those programs compared to other programs. And like I said, I'm particularly looking for something that we could do that we could get legislative action on, a law and amendment, creating a task force. And then special education too. Again, think about if you have a child and they're in school, are the services working right? Are there statewide programs that aren't working right? If it's something that's required by IDEA, then the recommendation from me is to go back through the advocacy for education. Myself and Wallace do education advocacy. We're called education specialists. So we can help you with that as well. But you know, it's kind of a tricky area because sometimes the answer is going back through education advocacy using one of the dispute resolution processes. But anyhow, there's me, Wallace, and Beryl that do that here. There's somebody like us at every center. I'm gonna have Wallace send this to you because Wallace knows how to do that. Let me see. Let me stop the screen sharing. Do I need to check the chat box again? Where did it go? There it is.
There is stuff in the chat.
Can you guys facilitate voter registration seminars for high school seniors in the New Orleans area? So the short answer is no, ma'am, because I am in Southwest Louisiana. I'm actually in Lake Charles. The longer answer is that there's a Families Helping Families Center in New Orleans and Jefferson Parish. So there's actually two centers really like up against each other that cover, because that area is so big. You can contact one or both of those about voter registration. There's also an organization called People's First. People First. There's not an S on people. And you could contact them. They're interested in voting and voting for people with disabilities in general. And okay, that's all I got right now. How about you, Wallace?
That's all I see. And another thing that was mentioned before that was someone said you could go to the council's website and watch committee meetings. And typically what you're watching there might be stuff with the Developmental Disabilities Council, not always the Louisiana legislature. For stuff with the Louisiana legislature, you got to go to the legislature website for that. And for stuff about Bessie, I believe you got to go to the LouisianaBelieves.com website for that.
Great. Thank you, Wallace. All right, let's see. So let's go to the second half of the meeting. Y'all can keep asking questions, by the way. Wallace and I go back and forth to the chat. So if you're signed up for LaCAN, one of the things that you're going to get is an email with this document in it. They call it the Louisiana LADDC News, Louisiana Developmental Disability Council News. And it talks about things that happened during the legislative session. So we started work before the 2024 legislative session on issues and funding for improving the quality of life for people with disabilities in Louisiana. Because particularly this legislative session, they actually started quite a bit before the session started itself. But let's recap some of the things that directly impacted people with disabilities. The governor has until I believe the 31st of this month for line item veto. In our state, the governor can go through a bill and say, no, I don't want this, or no, I don't want that. So he has what's called a line item veto. So if you see an asterisk, at least at the time this was put together, it had not been approved by the governor. Now, if he doesn't line item veto anything and he doesn't approve it, then it automatically goes into effect. But he's going to approve House Bill 1 or House Bill 782. So one of the things that we worked on this year was to increase the night rate on home and community-based waivers. If you're approved for night rate for the now supports waiver or row waiver, you know that night rate pays $5 less than day rate. And we found out, interestingly enough, we found out that our waiver is the only waiver that does that. All of the other waivers in the state pay the same amount for day and night. So we asked the legislators, that's one of those things that's not fair and doesn't work right. It's already hard to get staff people. And then when you add into it the fact that you can't pay as much, it's, yeah, even worse. That was included in the final budget, House Bill 1. The other thing that we worked on was money to eliminate the Flexible Family Fund wait list. The Flexible Family Fund is only for children. Unfortunately, that didn't make it into the budget. There's a waiting list. Kids do roll off once they're a certain age, well, 18, but there's more kids getting on to that need specific kinds of help. So there's about 2,000 at any one time, people on that waiting list. We'll have to wait and see if that's something that families want to include again next year, but we had difficulty finding people to testify about that. So I don't know if it's going to show up again. And then House Bill 782 was the supplement budget, and it was amended to include the $500,000 continuation funding for the regional Families Helping Family Centers. For the past 3 years, the Families Helping Family Centers have gotten $500,000 to split among 9 centers to cover the increase in costs. You know, just like everybody's house, there's been increases in everything. We were hoping to get it put back put continuing funding into the budget, but that didn't that part didn't go through. But the money for this next fiscal year is in House Bill 782. So Self-Determination and Community Inclusion Act 8240 moved the State Interagency Coordinating Council, SICC, which advises early steps under the Office for Citizens with Developmental Disabilities. For quite a few years, it had been under the Governor's Office of Disability Affairs. Let's see. House Concurrent Resolution wants the to raise the awareness about all the legal options available to parents and guardians of people with developmental disabilities to ensure their needs are met. I think that some parents didn't know that certain things were a choice. Let's see. House Bill 211 directs OCDD to make a expedited and easier to work, a faster process for families to obtain services through the Flexible Family Fund and waiver programs in emergency situations. Act 123 broadens the criteria for tutorship. We were kind of iffy about this one because they included adaptive functioning as a reason for tutorship. And I say we, Disability Rights Louisiana. But that did pass. Education and employment. That was a pretty major thing this year. Especially Education Savings Account, or ESAs. There was a bill that passed that created our version of ESAs. It's called Louisiana Giving All True Opportunity to Rise LaGator. And it's going to replace the current voucher program, but it's to help families or for families to be able to apply for assistance to help with private schooling. There were several concerns with this, that families were going to limit their civil protection rights, particularly concerning free appropriate public education. We had questions about accountability and monitoring. We had questions about where the money was going to come from, that it would quite possibly, and looks like it will, reduce funding to public schools. We have a fiscal cliff coming up, and we're already worried about being able to fund everything that we need to fund next year. And this is going to be, even though they're phasing it in, it's going to be expensive. And then won't be equal access to all students for the ESAs. House Bill 247 was well, the governor vetoed the Bessie policy establishing an appeals process for high school seniors who don't meet the LEAP test scoring requirements or the end of course EOC scoring requirements. Since the governor said that they couldn't do that, we were the only state that didn't have an appeals process. This the HCR 44 was passed, and it directs Bessie to look at other appeals options, but as of right now, Act 247 basically said no. Act 198 strengthened accountability in several places. So it increased due process time from 1 to 2 years, which is a little bit more flexible for families. It adds special education training to the list of training school board members are required to take upon election. It requires specific data to be submitted to the local special education advisory councils. Those are SEACs. We have one of those in 3 parishes for sure. If you're interested in learning about those in one of the 3 parishes in this area, you have to live in that parish. But call us. They're looking for members. But it's this tells them that they're supposed to give this information to the SEACs, like funding, financial data from state, federal, local sources, academic data, compliance violations. And then there was a little section put in there. There was some concern by parents that they weren't getting answers about installing cameras in special education and self-contained classroom. And this requires them to do it within 90 days of a parent's request. How am I doing for time? Okay, I'm still okay. Anybody got questions? I don't see any new questions.
I don't see any either.
Thank you, Wallace. This House Bill 362 requires schools to provide information during the IEP about the transferring of individual rights from the parent to their child upon adulthood. It also required information about tutorship to be provided to the parents, but it also bills change as time goes on. It was amended to include other options like supported decision-making, power of attorney, and interdiction. But this bill tells the Department of Education to develop necessary materials to give to the parents, so parents aren't surprised. Because I think sometimes when you have a child with a developmental disability that doesn't understand everything, you don't realize at 18 everything changes for them, just like for everybody else. Okay, H Bill 708 reduces the required quota charter schools have to ensure that their fair share that they have their fair share of students with disabilities. HB 340 was about a tracking system for parental complaints, but the governor vetoed this one. He says that there's a system already in place. I'm not sure that a lot of us agree, but that's what he said when he vetoed it. Act 116 required parents to be notified if their child isn't certified. And if you don't know, ask. Just from the education side of things. If you ask them, they'll tell you. HB 872 addresses ongoing concerns and barriers to accessing applied behavioral analysis services in school. Specifically, and I know a lot of parents will be glad to see some more definition to ABA or behavioral services in school, some more definitive definition. But specifically, this says it eases the process for background checks for ABA providers. It directs that local policies not be outrageously complicated and overbearing, resulting in providers not wanting to work with a school. It requires the Department of Education to create a dispute resolution process when the school and the behavioral health provider can't agree on the recommended treatment plan. It specifies a school level treatment plan that will not supersede what the provider has deemed a treatment plan. And then it strengthens language prohibiting schools from not allowing a behavioral health evaluation, assessment, or treatment plan from being preferred on school property. A lot of parishes or parents in parishes were saying that the ABA provider could only see a child for 30 minutes once or twice a week in another room, which it's more effective, and many treatment plans recommend doing that kind of work while the student is encountering those kind of situations. Act 512 requires parents to be notified 10 days in advance of special education services needed, a reduction or a removal of services. And it also talks about those ways that they have to be notified. On the employment front, there are multiple pieces of legislation to increase minimum wage. None of them made it through the process. The state concurrent resolution 17 requests the Department of Health, LDH, increase eligibility requirements for the Medicaid purchase plan, also known as the buy-in program. You know, and then they have these other things towards the bottom. So how can you find your representative? How can you find your senator? If you think of the, if you're interested in the misuse monitor, you can, there's a Excel chart that you can look at. Reminder about those community input meetings. And it was a busy year. But that's the major summary of what's happened this year. So does anybody need me to go back to anything? Well, first of all, how many of you are parents or family members or a person with a developmental disability yourself? Say yes in the chat if you're still here.
I'm not seeing anything in the chat yet. Oh, now I see something. Person says I have a child with autism.
Well, good. That information about the ABA providers might be of interest to you, or maybe the educational savings accounts. And then I see Nicole says self-advocate. Thank you, Nicole. Anybody else? Okay. Well, are there any questions? Because I know it wasn't that clear.
I'm not seeing any, but we do want to give you time to do it, so we're not in a rush.
Wallace, you want to drop the link for the evaluation?
Oh, sure.
So Wallace and I get extra points if we get our evaluation. And really, the evaluation is for us to make our trainings better. If you've got suggestions, let us know. There are places that you can fill in on that evaluation. If you have ideas for a webinar that you'd like to see that we don't necessarily provide or that you haven't seen, drop that on the evaluation too. There's more than one of us that look at all the evaluations, you know, to see what people are interested in or what people have to say.
And then you too might not have anything to say at the moment, but later on in a week or day or two or a month or so, you might say, oh yeah, here's a good idea. Well, we'll still take your input then too. So it doesn't have a timeline on it. So anytime you want to submit input or give it to us, we're willing to take it. There's no time limit on it.
Or you can just call us and say, hey, I have an idea. We're pretty open to any of those things. There's so many issues. It's when we get to them, we have a planning day every year. We have one coming up, don't we? Yes, we have one coming up where we spend an entire day planning for the next year, looking at what people recommended. If we don't do them right away, sometimes people recommend things and we start working on it for the very next month, usually. But things that people have recommended. So yeah, you got a good idea? We want to hear about it. Okay, well, I'm going to hang out for a few minutes. And if you think of something, chat me up.